All right, everybody, we're going to get started in just a moment. Just enjoy the music. Go ahead and get your whatever you like to have while you're listening. If you are watching this on replay, go ahead and skip ahead to a minute after I play the main opening. But see you soon, and welcome to this week's live stream. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the live stream. I'm Kristen Jeffers. I am the founder and editor-in-chief of the Black Urbanist. I also run Chris Pattern, which is where I sell these lovely scarves, or at least the scarf patterns. And this is Open Studio. This is me when I pull back the curtain, as it were, of the work that I'm doing. And this week, the theme of this week, of course, we are in Pride Month, so to everyone, my siblings in the LGBTQIA plus community, I hope you're having the best time this year at Pride. I hope you are getting what you need during Pride. I hope you're making Pride your own. And so this week's theme, I'm going to put that back up here on the screen as I talk. This week's theme is to radically love yourself and others this year for Pride. This week's book, I'm going to go ahead and put up here on the screen. Let me switch out the screen here. I'm going to talk about this week's book. So we don't, not necessarily every week, but definitely many weeks, I pick a book for the newsletter. Speaking of which, of the newsletter, let me go ahead and show you the newsletter. You can subscribe to the newsletter if you go to theblackurbanist.com/view, and you can go over to view and subscribe to newsletter. And then you'll have this box here. This will put you on what I like to call the OG newsletter list. This is the MailChimp list. But if you're watching on LinkedIn, you probably already know that this newsletter also comes out to you on LinkedIn. For those of you who love Substack, there's a Substack version. It's the same as everything else. It's the same copy and everything, but it lives inside of the Substack app. So for those of you who are monitoring your social media and everything, and I know, of course, I'm over here on Twitter. So of course, all my Twitter folks, you're here as well. And yes, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some things I've said on Twitter a little bit later in the webcast today. But You can always subscribe here on theblackurbanist.com and click on view or subscribe to the newsletter, or push it if you're on your phone. And you can go on Substack and find it. It's the Black Urbanist Weekly. You can also find it on LinkedIn, and then it is also on Medium. Medium is just under my given name, Kristen E. Jeffers. So that's how you can find the newsletter. And so this week, I'm going to, of course, talk about some of what's in the newsletter, but I'm also going to kind of share some other current events. And honestly, I'm going to talk to you pretty raw about what this month means to me and what has been thinking about where we are 2 years out of the moment that George Floyd provided us, as well as Breonna Taylor and so many other people who we really paid attention to in 2020, as well as COVID-19 and its continued challenges and what we're working through. And then there were some other articles in the newsletter I wanted to really lift up, but I want to specifically lift up that for those of you who are urban planners watching this, the message for you this week really is to plan, build, and live if the body isn't an apology. Now, I've heard from a lot of you between talking about some of these things around Twitter, talking about it in real life. I've heard from you about, oh dear, was talking about the newsletter, and let me get back on the screen. So let me just show you what I was just talking about. I'm going to go back to the slide and scroll up this part right here, subscribe, and then of course everything else you can just search for. So let me slide down to this part. To plan, build, and live if the body isn't an apology. Based on our book of the week. Don't think, no, I am not out here perpetrating and claiming that I wrote this. Obviously, this language is from Sonia Renee Taylor's best-selling book, The Body Is Not an Apology, which many of you discovered, like a lot of us, during this pandemic period. Let me throw this up on here. I'm actually going to fix this so that when I do share, they'll share it directly. But yes, this book, it is in my bookshop bookstore. There is a link to that on all of these sites, or you can go to Bookshop and you can search for Kristen Jeffers Media. So basically it's named after my main company, because there's a book list for Black queer feminist urbanism, there is a book list in general for urbanism, there is a book list for my yarn folks that really highlights some of my favorite yarn techniques, as well as makers of color who are doing things. So this is our book. This is another perspective from a Black queer femme person who is fat, who is darker complexion. They live now in New Zealand, but they are from the States. They were born here in the States. They would consider themselves a foundational Black American, which is the name we're using for those of us who are descendants of either slaves brought over from Africa, or people who came on their own accord to the so-called Americas prior to the period of slavery. These aren't the folks that are some of you all who have immigrated post 1965. We're all Africans. We all have that descendancy, but some folks are more recent African immigrants and have come over here by choice. Some of us, of course, were brought here as part of the chattel slave trade. So basically, this book really challenges all of us to be gentle with ourselves, to stop being hard on ourselves, to stop thinking that being fat is automatically bad. It's a state of being, and there's health is not necessarily based on your size. And it also challenges all of us to be more accepting. It has grace for us because we're programmed to be in a world where this is not the default posture, and we definitely don't build our institutions for that. And so that's been a theme lately for me this week. So I want to just adjust this a little bit. So I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna pull back up my newsletter page so that you all can see a little bit more. I'm gonna highlight some of those moments in this week's newsletter, and then talk about some things going on. Of course, some wonderful shout outs and congratulations are also in order. So, yes, this week's newsletter was called Plan and Build as If the Body is an Apology. And I wanted us to use some of that language, which, if you've never read it before, it is definitely some strong language, not so much profanity, but definitely language that may trigger you, that may trigger you into action, that may make you think hard and long about your privileges or perceived privileges. It's an easy read, it's a quick read, but it's a read that you want to sit with. And it's part of my continued effort to bring these ideas to, or let me go back to, this is the one I want. It's a part of our effort to continue to remember who we're building for, and sometimes it's building for ourselves. And as we go into this month, you see all the flags everywhere, you see the rainbows, and of course now that Juneteenth is a legal holiday, just like this is legally Pride Month, and those of us who are in both, in the case of we're celebrating and we're honoring both, this is a time for us to think about what we're going forward to. And this is a time for us to think about, no matter what our disease status is, what we want to shape for folks, what kind of thought process we want to shape, what kind of spaces we want to be in, what makes us feel safe, and what will allow more people to be affirmed and loved. And so what I highlighted here, that we have to be comfortable with things. We definitely need to be mindful of how nature is a part of this. There's so much conversation around climate change and how to be, and as she terms in the book, right relationship with nature. We have to think about that. We have to think about renewable materials. Many of you know me, and many of us have encountered each other because we've been thinking about how to build better. We've been thinking about how to organize better. And for me, it's that extra angle of, okay, I could be living in a beautiful townhome, but what if me or Les go to the doctor and today they decide that, oh, well, you might be a wealthy Black queer couple, but what is wrong with you? Why can't you be more, why are you so sick? What do you mean you have these problems? As I told some of you, I've been really motivated to talk about health and public health in this because it's hit home. And while we can celebrate this week, of course, congrats again to Les for winning this Capital Pride Award for EndoQueer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop this share screen. And I'm going to show you all an event we're both going to be doing that ties into the work that we've been doing around public health and bodies and our bodies living in the world. And that is with our colleague and friend, we're going to be on a panel with Janika Reed. And of course, this organization, Indo Black, is run by our colleague and friend, Lauren Cornegay, who is also our neighbor. It seems like a lot of folks that are advocating for this particular illness are still here. And so I know it has been said that we can't focus on just one illness, but we live in a system and in a health system. And of course, when you come, especially in a Black body, many of us in Black bodies come into the emergency room. And when you come into the emergency room, and I've been there with Les, and I've been there with my parents. Being there with my parents was just heart-wrenching. Many of you, it's been a minute since I've talked about, and I'm gonna get into some of this when I'm on this panel. It is a panel you can register for. It is next week. I believe it is June 16th. I'm actually gonna just make this whole page bigger. I apologize for the small list. But you're gonna see this tagged. It's tagged on Les's page. It's tagged on the EndoQueer page, on the Indo Black page. It's on my Twitter. If you want to register for this and join myself and Les and Janika Reed on this panel, to have this Juneteenth panel next Thursday night, June 16th at 7 o'clock Eastern. There will be some recordings, but please do think about registering, thinking about how racial justice, health equity, and of course, Les and I are going to also talk about our work in urbanism with this panel that is coming up. Because, yes, if many of us think about the urbanism from the transportation, many of us think about urbanism from, how many restaurants are there? Of course, people think about access. And even prior to this wave of displacement and gentrification, access to good hospitals was evident. More deaths, COVID deaths, have been out there in Black and brown communities. That is a fact. That's not something we can ignore. And yes, at some point, all of us may get this, just like the flu of 1918 is still in the world. Johns Hopkins just had a good set of blocks on it. Like their public health agency service had a good block on how do we get COVID to endemic, and how do we start feeling better about doing things. And yeah, for all of y'all who are out here, and I just want to say this, for all of you out here who have lived that week and a half, who are still living through long COVID, those of you who have other chronic illnesses, those of you who are also in the fibroid club like myself, like endometriosis, whatever it is, that's why this book is important, because our system makes us feel horrible for not being able to move. Our transit systems say that they're accessible, but they were built by people who did not care. Many of our transit systems predate the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so a lot of our communities, like, we know this. If you're watching this right now, this is probably not news to you. You're watching me, you follow me, you listen to me and others in my kind of wheelhouse of people. You follow me because this is one of the things that I talk about. You follow me because I happily talk about how my Black identity, my non-binary pansexual identity, how my being in a relationship, and of course she also talks about her experiences as a masculinist and a lesbian woman, and how living all these different places, living in being a Black American, being a Black North Carolinian, now being a Black, well, technically Washingtonian. I have actually lived in the district proper, for those of you who are ready to come for me, but I've really only been legally a Marylander, and even those distinctions and borders. And yes, next week I'm really going to have fun with us with these borders, and how these regional borders oftentimes restrict, how we had to often rethink regional borders during this COVID crisis, because if we didn't, then there would be people that would be hurt worse. And I know it's tough. It's tough when flukes happen. It's tough when you go and you expect certain kind of care and you don't get it. And I know I'm going to tell y'all, I'm scared. I'm scared of this next surgery. I'm scared still that my career will not be what it was. Some of y'all are like, gosh, you're so vulnerable. You record these sometimes. And yes, I'm obviously around the blankets and pillows because I needed to have those around me today. Got one of my scarves on. This is number 2 in the suite of scarves. This was the one I really figured out the mechanism for it. And I'm really thrilled to be featured over a couple of prominent queer friendly yarn accounts featured my work today. And I'm really, really happy about that. In fact, I'm gonna unshare those, and I'll keep talking as I find those, because I want to thank them on this live stream for giving me props, and also telling people to come over here and follow this work. So I'm definitely excited about that. I am, but having to go to the hospital, having to go through the hospitalization, having been there, and just knowing that for a lot of people, I know for me, especially now. But for a lot of people, and I'm very adamant, there's so many people that want to come to this urbanism table, but they can't because everything we talk about, all the speculation, all these 10, 20, 30-year plans, they can't grasp it because the day-to-day life is just bleak, really bleak for some, and others it's just so much else going on. And we cannot forget that when we do this work. I come here every week on the newsletter, and of course now I won't be on Wednesday. Next week we're going to move to our new spot on Tuesdays. I just want to have a little extra time to write the newsletter, give you time to read it, and then think about coming over and joining us on the live stream in the afternoons. Also, may experiment a little bit with timing of the newsletter, or at least not timing of the newsletter, timing of the live stream. And of course, if you want to advertise on these spaces, then you'll get shouted out in the main newsletter, and then you'll get shouted out on whatever day and whatever time that this particular presentation shows up on your LinkedIn or your Twitter or your YouTube. So that's that. So let me go over here and let me go over and show you these wonderful pages and these accounts to follow. Let's see here. So let me pull this first one up. This is a Instagram called Yarn Punk. They basically promote this idea that is not just a certain type of person who does all this quilting and yarning and such. And I'm so excited to be part of so many groups like this. In fact, before we go and ride in the Pride Parade here in DC, on Saturday morning, I'm going to be going to World Knit and Public Day over at National Harbor, which I'm so excited about because I'm going to take this right back off the screen. And you can look at my smiling face as I bring up the other place that I was shouted out to today. Let me go to them. Let's see, go over here and put this up on the screen because literally where I'm at right here is we're gonna be right back here. I'm not gonna be the only person walking around in a crocheted skirt on Saturday morning. In fact, this skirt's gonna make its appearance back out for the Pride Parade. So I will be wearing this with other people who are going to be selling knitwear notions. They're going to be selling their dyed yarn. It's going to be a lot of black women and other people of color specifically that are going to be at National Harbor in Oxon Hill in Maryland on a Saturday morning. So folks who are DMV local who want something to do before you go line up and watch us in the Pride Parade, head out to National Harbor if you can and join us for that. Very, very excited for that to be happening. And also thank you to So Queer for highlighting this particular post that I posted on Pan Visibility Day. I've gotten so much joy, and as I mentioned before, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. I showed this a couple weeks ago. Textiles and raw good textiles and prepper textiles is what made my hometown of Greensboro, North Carolina, a city. And that textile money paid for our hospital system, the Cone Health System in Greensboro. So the hospital I was born in, the hospital that my dad was taken for, and both those initial emergency room visits. There's pretty much everything. If I was at home and needing a procedure, I would either go to a Cone facility or a Cone affiliate facility. I took that for granted. Now, those of you who've read the City Lab report on the best cities for black women, this is part of why Greensboro is number one for black women in health, because I never had an issue with going to the doctor or anything. I had all my appointments, insurances were there. But of course, this was in the 1990s. And unfortunately, it's breaking my heart that North Carolina is getting more and more conservative. Of course, some of you may have seen, and I'm not going to glorify this bill by putting it up on the screen, but if you've been keeping up with North Carolina news, you know that we have on our own version of a Don't Say Gay bill. And even though it might be implausible to think about what life would be like, of course, if Roe rolls back, we don't have a bill in the books yet, but we have the favorability to have a abortion restriction. So it's just feeling kind of awkward. And of course, all these gas prices, because think about it, if you're pushing people out and it's cheaper to live further and further out, it's not all people who want to be out here. It's a lot of folks, especially our refugee and immigrant communities. That's the suburbs are the only places they can afford. This is not news for those of you who really watch this channel and who have been doing this work. And I think we have to start incorporating, we have to start working with our mental health folks. We have to start working with our public health folks. We have to start doing these integrated projects, and we do have to have conversations with each other. And we have to support each other, and we need to be mindful to make it okay to say that something's not okay. And then we have to make it okay to say that, hey, I don't feel well. I can't work this hard today. I can't be out on location. I can't do this engagement meeting. I can't do this or that. Something that a lot of conferences are doing, and I'll admittedly haven't been to any of our big industry conferences, period, in a while. But something that I've started to notice in conferences, in public health, in queer spaces, is that you have things like quiet rooms. You have, you do have a first aid area inside of the convention hall, just so that if something happens there, people can get to where they need to go. People are testing at certain conferences, and that's what I would like to see. Those of you who've read, some of you who are watching on Twitter have already read the thread, and some of you who have not have read it, go ahead and read it. By the way, we have privately squashed our public beef that we are shown there, but I do want to highlight that we do need to make provision. And the way I want to highlight that right now is really the way I did. Let me take myself back down. I'm going to share again an article from Autostraddle to help us who are planning Pride events. And this also goes for if you're planning your first set of Juneteenth cookouts, really bringing in the history and bringing in what's going on to your community. Of course, this whole thing, let me scroll down. You won't see the New York Pride ad by the time I put it up here. But this article, written by Heather Hogan of Autostraddle, who is also dealing with long COVID, who is dealing with a lot. Like, they've won awards for their work talking about their struggles with long COVID as a masculine of center, white, butch lesbian, living in New York City. They've talked about getting married. They've talked about all kinds of things that they've been able to do and what they can't do. And I'm going to go over here and scroll, and I'm going to keep this big on the screen. And once again, apologies for how tiny these things tend to be. And so basically, these are the suggestions. And a lot of this is thinking about being inclusive and thinking about equity and thinking about inclusion. And I'm a firm believer that equity and inclusion doesn't go anywhere if you just stop with race and you stop with gender identity. If you don't think about how inclusive are your prices, yes, people need to make an income. People also need to be able to balance that income with whatever your goal is. And I think we just, as far as, I'm actually going to put myself right back up, and then I'll go to this article because I want to talk specifically about like affordability, especially right now when there are those in the hardcore real estate industry that are intent on making homes stay ATMs, and there are those in the industry that are bent on helping people find homes. Let us not forget that there are two sides coming together. As much as we are getting rid of binaries in some places, this is one place where a binary is still very much existent. Let us not assume that everybody has the same mind around access to homes, access to transit, what's needed, access to healthcare. But over here, as y'all well know, I'm still going to be checking for making sure there are provisions there. Because there's a lot of folks, I know I'm very fortunate to have not tested positive yet. But I do have to have this big surgery, and that's going to take me out for a few weeks. And we've got all these mixtures of our health statuses, and a lot of us are going to be dealing. Some of us are going to be getting older and dealing with health status. A lot of us are going to be getting older and balancing children and aging parents and people in our communities. Some of us, we already take care of children and aging members of our community, and we already take care of ourselves. So I'm gonna put this back up on the screen big. And so, just allowing these options. Masks, if folks want to wear them, wear them. If you feel like that's not your jam, and if you have, and by the way, that is a privilege. I shared that in my stories the other week. If you have contracted, and if it's been 1 or 2 or 3 times and it's not making a difference for you, and you can in your jurisdiction do so, please do. But there is still very much a concern. And yes, at least for me and many others in public, they do work. This may be saving some folks for a second or third round. And I know for me, as someone who has seasonal allergies, especially since we've been talking about air quality, and there's studies are coming out that those of us who have a tendency to live in black and brown neighborhoods, and then some of us who are coming into neighborhoods that are being gentrified, some of the gentrification is not dealing with airborne substances. It's not dealing with the fact that you're living near, say, reservoirs, landfills, and stuff. It's just, or even sometimes depending on like how clean your public transit is. Like, these things are out here. So don't definitely continue to consider masking. And make it fun. Like, if you feel like you don't need to wear one, I know there's clear face options. I know that's been a concern for our deaf community to be able to, those who read lips, to be able to see your face. There are clear options. I know they still sell those face shields. Let's just think about doing things that are helpful. One thing that I noticed when we were at the Hopkins building yesterday for a health procedure, and the elevator calls out things. It's kind of like being on the metro trains. The metro trains are audible. You hear when the doors open. You hear what stop you're approaching. You have, at least here in DC, of course, we have the bumps on the ground. And I know New York does as well. I noticed that when I was there a few weeks ago. The bumps are on the ground so that you can use your stick or your wheelchair will hit those bumps, and you'll know that that's not to not roll any further. Likewise, I've noticed, I rode the MARC train yesterday, and I noticed that they have suicide prevention hotline there. So a lot of these things are just things that are nice. Outdoors, virtual, all these things are still, and I do want to shout out, and I do want to say that I do appreciate that APA National did do a hybrid option. But let us all be mindful that certain conversations may be happening in person and happening on hybrid, and that cross connection is not together. So let's all challenge ourselves. I'm also taking this pledge myself to be more mindful of thinking about, hence why I've created this companion to the newsletter, why I talk out certain things. LinkedIn has those automatic captions. I know YouTube, I think because there is a captioning happening, I think you can pull the captions and they're accurate on YouTube as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. Please do correct me if I'm wrong with that. And then if you just want to listen, don't think you gotta, even though I do put things on the screen, I do try to do my best to explain those things, and I'm doing better with that. So this is definitely still a journey for me, but these are things, and this link is in the newsletter if you want to do it. Tests are still available. I just tested myself this morning. As of this morning, I'm still negative. I had a runny nose, so I just got a test out just to make sure. Of course, this is these two right here are very important, and I think that's where this ties into the planning industry in general. Very rarely do I get a chance, and I'm gonna actually split screen this. Very rarely do I get a chance to work with folks with visible disabilities. Now, I know we are working with indivisible disabilities. I know I'm working with chronically ill people. I know we all go to the doctors, and this is our reality. Many of us were in the house, and even when people where stores are open, remember where stores were closing early, at least here in the States. Some stores have not restored their overnight hours. There are some 24-hour CVS's that have come back online, some 24-hour Walmarts, some even, I know there was a case of the 24-hour Target in some metro areas, but a lot of those stores are not no longer open overnight. Even the Amazon overnight deliveries are seeing less of those as well because yeah, we do need to rest up so that we can plan and be ready for whatever our next challenges are and be excited and be happy. So one thing I do want to post here, I want to post this next article. Let me move to just me and let me get this new article queued up. This is in Theme Journal, which is a new design journal that has come out that is focused on and created by Black folks and other people of color. I'm really excited. They say a lot of very interesting things, and so yeah, this question I had to, when I read this, I had to include this. That what if care is the work? Let me scroll down so you can see this person's face. I want to give this person their full glory of being a person, because oftentimes, yes, we are definitely not inclusive enough, and we're definitely still kind of marginalizing our Black and brown bodies in our public spaces. Hence why the title this week, and hence why I want you to take pride, whether it's pride in yourself or pride in thinking about where your intersections are and where you sit in this collective of things. So, we talk about not working as much or working differently or working smartly. Well, what if taking care of yourself is the main thing that you do? And then because you take care of yourself so wonderfully and radically, you have all this energy to do other things. Like literally, this is highlighting a residency in upstate New York that's specifically for Black and brown, queer and trans bodies, especially people who have been on the front lines of social justice work, as which we've had a lot of that very prominent lately. And one of the things they do, like I just talked about, kind of having quiet rooms and everything, they have like tubs, outdoor tubs. Like you could just soak in a tub in nature. Like you can kind of come and work on things if you want to. If not, you don't have to. And it's worth going over into the newsletter to click on that link, or going over to Theme Journal and clicking on What If Care Was the Work. This article has been out for a while, but I did want to highlight that this week. And likewise, also this last article I wanted to highlight before I highlighted one in particular. Let's see here. Remove that. Back to me. Stop the screen. And I'm going to pull up this one from Catapult, which is a literary journal I like reading on occasion. They have a lot of great columns. One of them that I did not make the cut for, yes, you can, they also have a newsletter. Let me skip that there for you. They also have a newsletter to subscribe to. This is specifically around kitchen appliances and the lack thereof. And if you decide to get, say, a portable washer, portable dishwasher, to not beat yourself up too much for it, right in the theme of what we're talking about this week. There's also a wonderful article on Catapult from another columnist talking about dealing with shame around being able to finally afford a home on a professor's salary, and talking about the dynamics of being a white person moving to suburbia as a young person, and then a white person as a writer, and how their finances are different. But this particular article talks about not having shame for having the appliances you need. I've definitely talked to some folks who are very excited about having amenities in their unit. We spent a lot of time at home in the last couple of years, and having extra amenities in our homes is valuable. It helps. And so let's be mindful of what people really want. Is it a granite countertop, or is that just something y'all production builders are doing to try to lure us? It would be nice to have a nice large kitchen island, a nice room for all of the little small appliances, and working in unit laundry on the upper floors. Like if you're gonna build these tall townhouses, please put those washers and continue to put those washers and dryers on the upper floor. And please consider doing elevator. Let me get bigger here. Elevator townhomes, and not just for those who are over 65 or those who have a disability already. If one thing that has been said within the disability advocacy community, which we do need to be listening to, as I showed on that when I showed that Autostraddle article, we absolutely need to be listening to our those who are dealing with chronic illness and those who have different abilities, whether they're visible or not. That is to me, whereas you've woken up to listening to Black voices, you're listening to queer voices all across the spectrum, visible or not. You also need to be listening to hear about what kind of like health accommodations, as well as like things like leave for raising children, leave for doing bodily transitions, leave for mental health. All these things are very important, and we are dealing with a gun violence epidemic. The stat came out last week that more children die of guns than they do of cars right now. So, to all of my war on cars people, we do need to take a moment and pause and think about everything else that is going on. Yes, cars are bad. Yes, we don't need large trucks. Yes, we don't have to use these cars that we do have as murder vehicles, but guns, COVID, other illnesses that can be prevented, like stress, we need to be thinking about that. But I want to end on such an exciting note. When I wrote this nomination, I did not realize it would yield so quickly, but I'm so thrilled that it did. You can watch this, you can watch the video of this on your own leisure, but I'm so proud. Let me go to see if let's see if they put a picture of, no, they didn't put the picture. I have to put a block up, so I'm gonna briefly mute. I'm gonna play the tab a little bit, and then I'm gonna just show let's see, let me remove. Oh, all right, back to sound, back to us. I want to congratulate Les publicly on the live stream for her Capital Pride Award. I'm so proud, very, very proud. Because as y'all know, I don't come out of my cocoon very often, but I did come out and that night, and it's looking forward to the Pride Parade this weekend. And once again, I showed earlier our panel that we're going to be on together talking about this. That's why those of you who did see we were in New York, we were there because we were invited to a special panel. But yes, my dear partner in love and life, Les Henderson, is a Capital Pride Award winner for this year for her work with Indo Queer, as well as everything else she has done in this community. So, babe, congratulations. And with that, I am going to let everybody else go out into the world and do whatever you want to do in the world. You can find these videos. They're on YouTube. They stream on Twitter. So there is a tweet that has this video in it that you can always scroll down and find. It is titled whatever we're going to talk about this week. It is also on LinkedIn. And in fact, if you just want a one-size-fits-all experience with all this stuff, subscribe on LinkedIn. You get the video notification on whatever day we do it, and you get the newsletter itself. And some of these links I mentioned are in the newsletter. So I'm trying to do a thing where I have the newsletter. Readers can read, listeners can listen, people can see, people they need to see can see. And so roughly about 30 to 45 minutes of this every week. But feel free to pop in and out as needed. Pause, especially if you're on YouTube, and even on LinkedIn, you can pause this. This is captioned. And finally, if you want to caption it, if you want to support me and support this work, down here, the scroll, become a patron. Also, if you go to kristenejeffers.com/workwithme2022, all of my opportunities to book me for various work opportunities, speeches, podcasts, panels, to consult on creating communication plans, public engagement, all of that can be booked on, you go on kristenejeffers.com, click on work with me in 2022. You can do that. I also have the capital campaign is still going. If you go over on GoFundMe and look for my given name, you can just donate directly to me. I am at Cash App, at Kristen, I think it's KJeffers2 on Cash App, and then Kristen-Jeffers-3 on Venmo. That will help me directly. I do have a small bit of an immediate need. Some things are going to be happening later this summer, but your donations, your investments right now in this program, either through Patreon, Venmo, Cash App, or the GoFundMe capital campaign, give me direct funds, or booking me on Calendly for a session also provides direct funds for me to continue to do what I do. We're working out here, but as we all know, things are a little tight, things are a little scary, and if you do have some extra, and also I would love to hear from you if you are interested in doing major sponsorships. I'm also talking to people about next year's Black Queer Feminist Urbanist Summit, having an in-person component, if this is a concept that you want to bring to your city or town or area, region, please reach out to me and let's talk. And especially if you are a foundation or a nonprofit with the funds to put on a conference, I would love to have your fiscal sponsorship and donations for that specifically. I love doing this work, but this is my livelihood. So please, if you're watching this, please think about investing in this work in one of the ways that I just told you. And some of those links to those investment opportunities are inside the newsletter. So have a great, wonderful day. Happy Pride to my fellow LGBTQ siblings. Next week, we're going to be talking to arbitrary borders. We're going to be leading up into Juneteenth, getting deep into why are we even here? Are we really free? All those wonderful things. So until next time, I'll see you soon.